Hey everyone, welcome back to the garden. The freezing garden. I think it was 8 degrees when I woke up this morning, but it's sunny out and it's perfect opportunity on a day like today in the winter to go around and look at the garden and see what evergreens you've added or need to add. Maybe you have some favorite ones. Maybe you have an empty spot where you feel like you need some winter interest, so you can put another evergreen somewhere. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about some of the evergreens we've added over the past few years. We've been heavily working on adding evergreens to our garden over the past 3 years. So let's take a walk around the garden, and we probably will do some of this video inside, some of it outside, just because of the temperatures. We'll just bounce back and forth depending on conditions and whether or not I want to show you a picture or a clip of the live plant or something from a previous video. But at any rate, let's talk evergreens for winter interest. One of my favorite evergreens that we just planted this past summer is back here. This is a 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 Norway spruce. It's already about 7 feet tall. And I'll talk to you again more about that on the inside because it is just freezing. I've also planted a bunch of 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 hollies. Now, they're not especially special, but I like them because they are evergreen, but they have that beautiful pop of chartreuse, and the new foliage when it comes out is pink. Nice to tuck these in here and there. And here's a shot of a younger 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 holly. We just bought these a couple months ago and planted them very, very recently. And you can see, do you see that little bit of pink in there? That's kind of like what the new growth looks like when it emerges. So you kind of get three to four colors on these little false hollies, which is why I love adding them throughout the gardens. So Wilson Brothers Gardens describes the 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 as majestic and kind of statuesque. And that's because it is, and that's why I chose it. It's a really great specimen tree for an area of your garden that needs kind of like an exclamation point, or needs something that's just a little bit different. Maybe not a green giant arborvitae, not any kind of Spartan juniper, but something where you really want a specimen tree. And it is a tree because it can get quite big, but not as big as your straight species of Norway spruce. This is about 25 to 30 feet tall and probably 6 feet wide, but I'm going to say in ideal conditions, it probably can get up to 10 feet wide. And like most Norway spruces, it is a really tough plant. Now, they do also say that for sandy, loamy type soils, you want to amend those so that they're not so free draining, because most Norway spruces want consistently moist soil. So if you have a sandy location, you want to definitely put some compost in there so that the soil retains some moisture for this one. It's relatively moderate growing. I wouldn't say it's fast. I wouldn't say it's slow. So if you buy a smaller specimen, it is going to take a while to get there. The one I bought from the garden center where I work was already about 7 feet tall. We'll see how fast that grows in the next couple of years. It's hardy in zones 3 through 7 in the east because of our heat and humidity. If you are in the west, it can be hardy to zone 9. I would imagine zone 9 would be the Pacific Northwest. I would not try to grow this in the Southwest, probably way too hot in that zone 9. So again, just a really beautiful specimen tree, and I am so glad I was able to get one of these and add it to our garden. Now, as far as the 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 holly, again, it's not a special shrub, but it does have beautiful variegated foliage for pops of color in the winter landscape. It's not just one color, say like a boxwood or a smaller, like a castle wall holly or a castle keep holly, which are just green. This has several different colors, as I think I just showed you in the clip. I think they're about 3 to 4 feet tall and wide, mostly sun. You can put them in a little bit of shade, but you probably won't have as much color. They're not as shade tolerant as a boxwood. And I do think in ideal conditions and over time, they can get bigger than 3 to 4 feet wide, tall and wide. So it's just something to keep in mind. They are prunable, but you know, it's one of those shrubs that's just best left to grow in its natural state. It's not going to be like round. It's not going to be mounding. It's not going to be upright. It's kind of going to be all over kind of a shrub. You can probably prune it once that new growth comes out, but then you're cutting off the pretty pinks that you might get otherwise. So that's something that I would plant it and know where you want it so that you can keep it, so that you don't have to prune it if it does get to be 6-7 feet tall and wide. I've never seen one that big, but in ideal conditions, I think they can get that big. So just keep that in mind. And they are hardy in zones 6 through 9. And I am looking at the 𝗟𝗂𝗶𝗲𝗲 website right now, and it does say 3 to 5 feet tall, 4 feet wide in 10 years, taller with age. So definitely one of those plants that's slow growing, but can exceed expectations if you're basing your planting location on what it says on the tag. Most of those tags, most plant tags will give you the growth like they did here in 10 years. Evergreens never stop growing. So that's just something to keep in mind. Something else we've been planting a lot of in the last just couple of years are boxwoods. I didn't think that boxwoods would ever be something that I would plant. We have several different kinds of boxwoods. These are the new gen Freedom. I'll talk to you about those. This is a green tower. These over here are older new gen Freedom, so I'll see if I can get you a shot. You can see a little bit of the difference in size. Smaller ones in the background there, and the bigger ones here. And then we have here another, this is a green pillar boxwood, basically the same as the green tower. I think they're just different breeders, to be quite honest with you. You can see the nice pyramidal shape of that, which is why I chose it. Boxwoods come in all shapes and sizes. These are a Korean boxwood. I believe they're called Sunburst, and I think you can see why. Again, another bright pop of yellow green in the garden. So I chose the new gen Freedom boxwood because I like most of my shrubs to be uniformly shaped. So I don't like generally shrubs that are wider than they are tall, and the new gen Freedom is as tall as it is wide. So 3.5 by 3.5, I think, but in 15 years is the guidance on these. 5 by 5 in 25 years. I don't think I'll have to worry about it in 25 years. But anyway, that's why I chose the new gen Freedom over the Independence or the Liberty Bell. They are very, very prunable if you want to keep them smaller. And actually, new gen boxwoods are supposed to be pruned in the spring. That is the key, apparently, to keeping them boxwood blight free. They are resistant. They're not completely incapable of getting the disease, especially in areas where boxwood blight is a real problem. It isn't here, so I don't have to worry too much about that. But the guidance on the new gen is that you should prune them twice a year as a general rule. They're also leaf miner resistant, which is a good thing. They can bronze in the winter. That doesn't bother me. I kind of like the look of the bronze on the boxwoods, as long as it doesn't take over the whole plant. And generally, bronzing occurs when they're planted in an unprotected location. So maybe on the northwest side of your house where all those winter winds come from, you might get a little bit of that bronzing or a lot of that bronzing. So far, I think the ones that I just showed you, they might look a little tinted bronze, but they are planted in a somewhat protected location. They don't get a lot of wind right there, so I'm not too worried about that. There are 2 other varieties, I believe I mentioned, Liberty Bell, and you can guess what that's going to look like just by the name Liberty Bell. I think it's more of a gumdrop shape. And then the new gen Independence is, I believe, a little bit wider than it is tall, but all hardy zones 5 through 9, same thing. They should be pruned. Boxwood and leaf miner resistance is really good. The Korean boxwood, the Sunburst, is a little bit smaller. I believe it's like a 30-inch by 18-inch. Hardy in zone 5 through 9. I think I gave the wrong stats on the new gen. I believe those are hardy in zones 5 through 8. Both of these are sun tolerant. Again, I feel like it's in the cooler climates. You can put them in more sun. Most boxwoods in hotter climate will require a little bit of shade. And obviously most boxwoods like free draining soil, mostly dry soil. Water them in their first year to get them established, but after that, should be able to just leave them be, unless I guess if you're in extreme drought. But for the most part, boxwoods are pretty drought tolerant. Something else we've started using in our gardens for winter interest are Carex feather falls. You can see 2 of them here. We added three or four more of them in different areas around the garden. And these are evergreen, sturdy mounds, grassy foliage. Really look nice with boxwoods, but again, it provides a different texture in the winter as opposed to a shrub texture. They're just really graceful. The Carex feather falls is much wider than it is tall, if that's something that appeals to you. I just love the mounding habit. They're about 2 feet tall, 18 inches to 2 feet tall. They can be up to 4 feet wide. They're hardy in zones 5 through 9. They can take full sun to full shade. Most Carex can take that full spectrum of light, whatever it is on your property. And I just feel like it's a nice texture, a different texture from a shrub to add throughout the garden. We have a lot of different Carexes on our property, but the feather falls really seems to have the fewest issues and since they do get so big, like we have a lot of Evergold, which is a Japanese sedge, but they stay a lot smaller. They're a lot more finely textured. I kind of like the bold texture of this Carex Feather Falls, which is why I've chosen to add it in so many different places. So if you need something for a tall, narrow privacy screen, I'm going to show you a couple of different items we have here. Get a little bit closer. Talked about these several times. These are the American Pillar arborvitae. They are a really, really fast grower. And if you don't have room for a green giant arborvitae, which can get about 40 to 60 feet tall and wide, American Pillar is a great option. Let's go outside of our gate and take a look at this from the other side. So hopefully you can see this. I know at this time of the year, the light can be quite funky. So we have 4 American Pillar arbs here. They are about probably close to 13, 14 feet tall. Planted them in 2023 and they were tiny. I will put a clip in there of what they looked like. So they're really fast growing. They have that nice kind of elegant habit and structure like the green giant arb has. They're not tight like an emerald green, but they're very fast growing like the green giant arb. So again, if you don't have room for the green giants, this is a great alternative. We don't have a lot of room in our side garden here, so this seemed like the perfect alternative for a little bit of narrow privacy screening. We've planted these in several different locations in our garden now. The other ones are much younger, much smaller, but I can't wait for them to grow up. So we're outside the fence now, and you can see just how tall they are. And they are already providing that little bit of screen that we wanted over here. Now, I will say they're not as dense as the Forever Goldie. The Forever Goldie have been in the ground for, I don't know, a year or two longer at least, but you know, they're a different kind of arborvitae. But these are starting to give us exactly what we wanted here. Let's back up some more. So yeah, I'm real pleased with the way these have worked out. Right here we have an Isley fastigiate. I think that's what it's called, Isley fastigiate blue spruce. So again, if you do not have room for a Colorado blue spruce, Isley fastigiate is a much, much smaller version. I think this one is like a 3 to 5 feet wide. Really nice blue needles. You can see it's pyramidal shape, and I'll give you some more stats on that as we get inside. I love this little evergreen. This is the Burning Love Leucothoe. We added a couple of these this year. Just a nice little evergreen for a shady area. If you don't want to use a boxwood, these are not as hardy as boxwoods, but I'll talk to you a little bit more about that inside. This is another type of Leucothoe here. This is a Rejoice Leucothoe. This is a native Leucothoe and it's coastal. So that should give you a little bit of a hint about where it likes to grow, but ours seem to do just fine here. Now we do provide a little bit of extra moisture, especially because they were newly planted this year. And then this small yew is a Duke's Garden plum yew. Absolutely love these because they're so low maintenance. Just plant it and forget it. We planted several of these over the past couple of years, and even in the really dry weather we've had, really have not had to provide any additional moisture. So the reason why I chose the Burning Love Leucothoe is because I didn't want a boxwood up here. I don't necessarily want boxwoods all over my gardens, especially in areas that I feel like are a little bit less formal. And when I first saw this Leucothoe advertised, I guess you could say, on another gardening channel, I immediately started to look for it because it has this beautiful maroon kind of wine red burgundy winter foliage, and some of the new foliage can be a little bit reddish as well. It does get little white flowers in the spring, but I like that it's formal, but not like a boxwood formal. It's a little bit more arching, almost more of an arching habit, like a lot of Leucothoe we get. But this one stays as tall as it does wide, so it's not going to be kind of like the paisley pup or the rainbow Leucothoe, which are going to get much wider than they get tall. This will be more like a mound, 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. It's hardy in, I believe it's zones 6 through 10, 6 through 9. It does require consistent moisture, and it does prefer shade or dappled afternoon sun. So if you're in zone 8 or 9, I would imagine you'd want to put this in mostly shade. Mine does get a little bit of sun in the afternoon. Maybe if you're in zone 6, you could put this in a full sun location. But 7, 8, 9, I would tend to put it in a bit more shade. And I think, let me look up real quick, hardy in zone 6 through 10. I'll see if I can show you a picture of what the reddish maroon foliage looks like in the fall and the spring. So the only real difference between the Burning Love Leucothoe and the Rejoice Leucothoe is that the Rejoice is native. The Burning Love, I think, is native to China. The Rejoice is a little bit bigger, still has that beautiful arching habit, still has the beautiful dark red wine color in the fall. The new growth is also red. I think they're both hardy in the same zones. They both like that dappled sun or afternoon shade. The Duke's Garden plum yew can be quite a bit bigger, 4 to 6 feet tall and wide, but they are very, very slow growing. So they're not going to get there right away, and they're absolutely prunable, completely and easily prunable like most yews. And the great thing about these is these are a cephalotaxis as opposed to a taxus. That means they're deer resistant. Most yews in the taxus genus, species, I don't remember all that from college, but most taxus are not deer resistant. In fact, taxus is not a deer resistant plant, but cephalotaxis, if you have a lot of deer, you don't have to worry about that because they are definitely deer resistant. They are also hardy in zones 6A through 9B. I think in cooler climates they can take full sun. My garden, they're in shady-ish locations. I would think if you're in zone 8 or 9, you'd probably want to put this in a mostly shade location. My favorite dwarf evergreen that we planted here a few years back, I've talked about it a couple of times at least, is the 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 arborvitae. It's a globe arborvitae. They put on a little bit of bronze in the winter, which is nothing too brown that makes you think that the plant would be dead. But these are the perfect low maintenance globes for lining a path like we have here, about 2.5 feet tall and wide. They like a little bit moist soil. So if you have some place that does stay a little bit more wet, these will be good. Now, they don't want to sit in soggy soil. That's not what I mean, but they can take a little bit more moisture. And we have 3 more we planted this year. Those ones I just showed you, we planted in 2023. And those were already a pretty good size. These were tiny. They were 2-gallon size containers. You can see a little bit more of the bronze, but they've actually put on a little bit of growth since they've been planted here, just a few months. They're just the perfect little specimen, again, for lining a path or our dry creek bed here. Maybe you want to use them as a boxwood alternative. So the reason why I chose the 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 arborvitae is because it maintains its neat little ball shape without any pruning whatsoever, and it's fairly dense. And the nickname is swamp cedar, so that gives you a clue as to its moisture tolerance. Now, again, it does not want to be in soggy soil, but when we have consistent rains and consistent heavy rains, our dry creek bed can overflow. So these little Donica arborvitaes will be underwater. Now, it's very fast draining, but they can be underwater and they can handle that kind of wetness. So that's a consideration. Again, no soggy soil, but definitely able to handle even more moisture than most arborvitaes, which like consistent moisture. So again, I just chose a few of my favorites, ones that have done really well for us. I hope this helps you in choosing some evergreens or even some Carexes for your garden for winter interest. Hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye. And stay warm.